Okay, let's unpack this. We've got some really interesting source material today. It's focusing on something I know many of you are actively working on, improving your English language skills.
Right. We're diving into an English learning video here.
Yeah.
And it seems created with a very clear goal.
Which is
to significantly boost vocabulary and fluency. And it presents a specific 4-part method to do that.
Got it. And our mission for this deep dive then is to really go beyond just describing the video. We want to understand the engine behind it,
Yeah, the specific techniques, the content itself,
Right.
and how the source claims they're designed to actually help you learn English faster.
And speak more fluently, right? It's
Right.
getting a look under the hood at their strategy.
Exactly. And the source material, it lays out a pretty structured exercise flow.
Okay.
It starts with listening practice, then moves into vocabulary building. Then there's an interactive sort of listen and answer bit. And finally, shadowing practice.
Okay. It sounds like it builds step by step.
Yeah, and the core promise, really, is that this structured approach isn't just random practice. It's designed to actively train your brain for fluent English speaking.
Interesting. So are you ready to explore these methods together? Let's jump in.
Let's do it. So according to the source, that first part is all about English listening practice.
Right.
The basic instruction here is listen to a conversation between native speakers and really, really concentrate on getting the meaning.
Getting the meaning. Okay, so it's less about catching every single word and more understanding the overall gist, the main idea.
Precisely. And the example conversation they use is, it's deliberately simple and relatable.
Like what?
It's just two people chatting about a new cafe, one that's opened up near the library.
Okay, everyday stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They mention details like it's being a nice spot, that it's student-friendly, cheap prices, free Wi-Fi, and whether it was crowded or not. Simple things.
What's interesting there, I think, is how the source frames it. They explicitly say, focusing on the meaning helps you understand real-life conversations better.
It grounds the listening practice in a practical everyday scenario.
That makes a lot of sense. You're not treating it like a grammar puzzle you have to solve.
Right. You're just following a little mini story,
Yeah.
an interaction you could genuinely have or overhear. It makes the language feel, alive.
Okay, so you've listened. You've hopefully understood the basic conversation. What's the next step in their process?
So moving into the second part, the source shifts focus. It puts it squarely onto vocabulary.
Vocabulary, right.
This section takes specific words and phrases from that cafe conversation you just heard and explores them in more detail.
Okay, so it's context-specific vocabulary. It's not just some random list pulled out of thin air.
Exactly.
How do they break the words down then?
Well, the method described is pretty clear. They explain the word or phrase first, and then they provide multiple example sentences. The idea is to help you really understand and grasp the meaning easily.
And what stands out there is the variety of those example clips, right?
Yes. Take their example, the phrase cater to.
Right.
They don't just give you one sentence. You hear it used in contexts about hotels catering to business travelers, websites catering to specific users, even businesses catering to dog owners. It really shows the flexibility of that phrase.
Totally. It gives you a feel for the range of situations where you might actually use it.
And they do this for other useful expressions too, I got to admit.
Oh, yeah. How do they explain that one?
They explain it's just another way to say, I have to say, or I must be honest. And again, they back that up with several different example sentences showing it in use.
Okay.
Same structured approach for other words they pull out, like expect.
So this approach, it reinforces the meaning not just through a definition, but by, seeing and hearing the word used in multiple varied real-world scenarios.
Spot on. That repetition in different contexts is, it's a key principle in how we actually acquire language naturally, isn't it?
It really is.
And the source itself really hammers home that point about repetition right around here.
Before the next step.
Yeah, even before they get to the most active part, they emphasize that repetition is, and I quote, very important for fluency. Their specific advice is watch the video multiple times and, crucially, practice answering questions out loud to speed up your speaking improvement.
Okay, that advice about answering out loud feels like a really strong bridge to the third part you mentioned. The listen and answer practice.
Yes.
This is where the interactivity really ramps up, right?
Right. And here's where it gets, I think, really interesting and quite clever.
How so?
The source takes that simple cafe conversation you heard at the very beginning
Yeah.
and basically turns it into a Q&A session. It fires off specific questions about the details from that chat. Things like, did Anna ask Mark about a new hospital?
Okay, testing recall.
Exactly. Or, what did Mark order at the cafe? Little details like that.
And the crucial instruction here, I'm guessing, isn't just to listen to the answer provided.
No, that's the key. It's to try and answer these questions out loud yourself before the correct answer is given in the video.
Ah, I see. So that's where passive understanding really turns into active production.
Yes. It forces you to recall the information you heard, use the vocabulary you just learned, and actually put it into spoken sentences.
That's smart. It forces you to actively use the language.
And they really, really lean into the repetition here, too. They emphasize repeating this Q&A exercise every single day.
Every day.
Until, they say, you can rattle off the answers quickly and confidently. It's specifically designed to train your brain to access that learned information rapidly.
Right.
Form responses, under a little bit of time pressure.
That's fascinating. It really highlights that fluency isn't just about knowing the words, but about the speed and kind of the ease with which you can retrieve and use them in a real conversation. This exercise directly targets that retrieval speed.
Absolutely. And then, after building comprehension, vocabulary, and that rapid retrieval skill.
There's one more piece.
Yes, the final piece the source presents is shadowing practice.
Shadowing, right. I've heard of this. This involves listening to the native speakers again.
Yep, back to the original conversation.
But this time, you're reading or repeating the lines out loud immediately after them, trying to mimic them.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
The focus here shifts slightly. It's less about understanding what is said and more about mimicking how it's said.
So you're trying to match their intonation, their rhythm.
The melody of the language, yeah. The subtle sounds of connected speech. The source explains this exercise is key for sharpening your pronunciation and improving the overall flow and sort of the naturalness of your spoken English. It's like practicing the music of the language.
If we connect that to the bigger picture, shadowing seems vital for embedding the natural patterns of spoken English.
Definitely. It makes you sound more fluent and, importantly, probably easier for native speakers to understand you.
Right. It takes the accurate sentences you practiced forming in the Q&A and adds that layer of authentic delivery, the sound and rhythm.
Precisely.
So, let's look at the complete picture here. What does this all mean? You start with understanding the context, the gist, through listening.
Right.
Then you break down and explore the specific language with targeted vocabulary work.
Yep, focusing on words from the listening.
Then you actively practice retrieving and using that language by answering questions out loud.
The active recall part.
And finally, you work on the sound and rhythm through shadowing. It's not just 4 random steps, is it? They really seem to build on each other.
It is, yeah. It's a layered and progressive approach. It clearly moves you from passive input, just receiving the language, to active processing with the vocabulary, then to interactive production in the Q&A.
Right.
And then finally, to refining the actual form and sound with the shadowing. It creates this kind of loop where each step reinforces the others.
And the single thread the source emphasizes throughout, the absolute key, they say, makes this method work for you is
repetition.
Repetition.
Watching and repeating these specific exercises multiple times is presented as the direct path to training your brain for speaking and seeing actual tangible improvement.
This approach, it seems to directly tie back to the goal so many learners have.
Yeah.
Gaining knowledge, in this case, English proficiency, quickly but also thoroughly. By breaking the learning process down into these distinct, actionable steps and providing the content for each step, it offers a really structured way to practice. For someone maybe feeling overwhelmed by, the sheer scale of learning a language, having this clear path and specific tasks could make it feel much more manageable.
I agree. Instead of that sometimes vague advice like, just go practice speaking, this method gives you concrete, repeatable exercises.
Grounded in an actual conversation, even if it's a simple one.
Exactly. Simple, but practical.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. The source strongly suggests repeating these exercises daily until you can answer those cafe questions quickly, confidently, without hesitation.
That commitment to focused repetition on simple exchanges is really central to their method.
It is. And this raises, I think, an important question for you, the listener, to consider based only on what the source presents. The source argues this focused practice trains your brain for fluency. So the question is, how much does this kind of consistent practice on simple, everyday conversations like the one about the cafe truly build the necessary foundation for tackling more complex communication challenges later on in English?
This is a good question. Is mastering the simple stuff the bedrock for everything else?
Right. And maybe thinking about what specific small steps you could integrate into your own routine right now, pulling from these methods. Maybe trying the Q&A part or the shadowing with a short piece of audio you already use.
Yeah, what little piece could you start with today?
Exactly. Something to think about as you continue your own language journey.